Vice-Chair of the UN of the UNCTAD in Geneva, leading the organization's work on the financing for development, the sustainable development goals, and UN development system reforms. He wrote a degree from the Paris School of Economics and from McGill University. Over to you, please.
And thank you all for joining us here at the House. It's a real privilege and an honor to present the World Economic Situation and Prospects. As many of you know, this is an annual report produced by the UN system, by the UN Secretariat, the major institutions working on economic and social affairs in the United Nations system. It's led out of New York by the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, but it also brings together inputs from UNCTAD in Geneva, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, as well as the regional commissions around the world, including ESCAP, which over the past 3 years, there's been one crisis after another. These cascading and compounding crises are interlinked in the point of 2030. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are really in need of rescue. Essentially what's happened is, the recovery to COVID-19 had not even really taken root in many developing countries, especially when the shock of the war in Ukraine basically appeared a little bit less than a year ago. And at that point in time, already there had been signs of inflation emerging across the world economy that then were exacerbated by this shock. The immediate shock, of course, due to energy supplies coming out of the Black Sea, but also food supplies, as the breadbasket of the world, essentially, Russia and Ukraine, but also the effects of the shock on the markets for a lot of commodities. And this disruption in food and energy markets has really exacerbated food insecurity and malnutrition in many developing countries. And we've seen essentially high inflation erode real incomes, triggering a global cost of living crisis. And that's pushed hundreds of millions of people into poverty, on top of those who were pushed into poverty by COVID-19. Significant economic and social impacts, especially on the most vulnerable. And at the same time that all of these crises are happening, we have also increasing evidence of the climate crisis. And this crisis estimated 3.0% in 2022, marking one of the lowest growth rates in recent decades. And this downturn, this year is expected to be slower than last year, and that's true pretty much all regions except for East Asia, and that's only because China will be bouncing back from what has been a longer COVID impact. Many central banks believed that it was transitory. And however, those inflationary pressures caused supply and COVID recovery was taking place. The world economy has been driven by food and energy prices. Global inflation in 2022 averaged 9%, which was the highest rate in several decades. And to tame that, as I mentioned, central banks across the developed and developing countries raised interest rates aggressively. However, as you see from this graph, it was really only in Latin America where the rates started rising early. To what degree is this transitory or not? The report does take a look at some of that issue. And for 2024, the United Nations is expecting some moderate improvement in the world economy, especially in some of these current macroeconomic economy. And there are some signs, as I mentioned, that inflation across all countries, developing and developed, as well as changes to the international financial architecture, especially to try to permit countries to have a bit more leeway in their capacity to cope with these multiple and interlinked crises. We see lots of opportunities for kind of pushing this agenda in India's G20 presidency. We see encouraging signs that there are some potential big wins out there. We're estimating next year that growth will be faster than this year, but that's because it's coming from a lower level. Because as you know, in East Asia, many East Asian countries have hiked policy rates and intervened extremely strong. And higher interest rates, the global liquidity tightening, and currency depreciations have made these countries' external debt servicing costs much more costly and increased their deterioration in the current account,